Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caden Kubler, and welcome to the fourth edition of the Caden's Corner Football live stream. We've got a tremendous episode for you guys today. I am so excited to recap week one of the college football slate. Ladies and gentlemen, the best time of the year is all the way back, and I get to break it down for you guys today, and boy, am I excited. We've got so much football to talk about, some of the biggest storylines in the sports as we head into week two. We've got the NFL season starting on Thursday, so this is going to be a jammed-packed episode, so buckle up, get your food, let's get going right now. And we had a massive game in week one between Ohio State and between Texas, the most anticipated game maybe of the college football season, where Arch Manning is going to start his season opener. We finally get to see what he's made of against Ohio State, the reigning defending national champions, one of the best teams in college football this year. They opened up as the preseason number 3 team in the country, but they're hosting this Texas team that opens up as the number 1 team in the nation. And Arch Manning struggled. He struggled, to say the least. And I have seen some of the most ridiculous kind of overreactions when it comes to Arch Manning, and quite frankly, it's been ridiculous. And I'll break down the entire situation as we kind of continue throughout the episode. But Arch Manning struggled, to say the least. Ohio State won this game 14-7. Arch completed barely over 50% of his passes. This team only had 0 points with 4 minutes left to go. I mean, they really struggled to get anything going offensively. And the way I looked at this for Texas's offense, I felt like the training wheels were on for Arch Manning and for this team. It felt like so often when you would get to the second and longs, when maybe there'd be an incompletion on first down, Sarkisian would just go to the run on second and long, and it wouldn't go anywhere. Nothing would transpire of it. And then you're in a third and long situation asking Arch to get something done. And ultimately, Matt Patricia and this Ohio State defense was unbelievable. They were so awesome. This is a brutal first week matchup for Arch Manning, to be quite honest with you guys, because it's like Arch Manning started to figure it out. But he's going to have a lot more to do if this Texas team wants to reach the goals that they obviously set at the beginning of the season. They were the preseason number 1 team in the nation. You're obviously talking national championship. You're talking Arch Manning, who is the favorite to win the Heisman. You're talking about him being the number 1 overall pick. You've got everything that you're throwing around this Texas team and Arch Manning, and for them to ultimately come out here and lay an egg, yes, it is disappointing, but I'm still optimistic overall about this team. They lose 14-7. I think if you go into this game and ask Steve Sarkisian, hey, if you know that you're going to hold Ohio State to 14 points at home, would you take that? He's going to say yes every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. That's just the reality of the situation. This defense was tremendous, in my opinion. They did a great job of holding this Ohio State team to really a slow game offensively. They only rushed for 77 yards, averaged 2.3 yards per carry. They did a tremendous job of forcing Julian Sayin to beat them. And like I said, they only had 14 points. And this is now back-to-back games where they've done a tremendous job against arguably the best player in college football, and Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith had 6 receptions for 43 yards. This Texas team did a tremendous job of slowing him down, of slowing down this Ohio State offense. It was just Texas's offensive struggles that really halted them from being able to get over the hump, from them being able to show their true colors. And that's ultimately what we saw in this week 1 game. I'm optimistic for Arch Manning. I think this is just classic our society. Everybody switches up on somebody once they have a bad game, once they have a bad performance. When you have that Manning last name, it obviously is going to carry a lot of weight. And that's what we saw throughout the entirety of the offseason. The dude only started 2 games and he's the Heisman favorite. So yes, very big expectations, a lot of pressure on Arch Manning. I think the one thing that we've got to see better, he's got to be more accurate in the short to intermediate game. When Ohio State would rush, get pressure on him, he would kind of collapse in the pocket, and you would see that frequent inaccuracy, where if you just let him go, give him some read options to try and get him loose, I felt that they just did a bad job of kind of getting him into a rhythm, and then all of a sudden they're down 14 points, and it's a big time concern for what this Texas team can do offensively. They've got a tough schedule. They've got to be a lot lot better. I know everyone's like, oh, all of a sudden they can't go in the national championship. I disagree. I think everything is still in front of this team. I still believe in Arch Manning and what he can do. He's just got to take a deep breath, trust his offense. I think Sark's got to let him go a little bit. You got 3 weeks to kind of regroup. You got San Jose State, you got UTEP, and then Sam Houston for 3 cupcake opponents, and then you're going to go on the road against Florida. So they've got to be a lot more buttoned up. This offense is going to need to be a lot more explosive. Obviously, it's going to start with Arch. I believe he can get there. I still believe everything is in front of this Texas team. And ultimately, they shouldn't be punished for playing a tough week 1 opponent in Ohio State. That is a brutal week 1 game. And we're seeing a lot of teams, like Georgia, they just beat the brakes off of Marshall by like 50 points. They should be rewarded for playing a super tough opponent in week 1. Let's move on here. LSU was arguably the most impressive team in week 1. I would say they were the most impressive team. Yes, Ohio State beats the number 1 team in the country. LSU goes on the road and beats the number 4 team in the nation in the Clemson Tigers in Death Valley, this Death Valley Tigers matchup. I was so impressed with what I saw from this LSU team. There were multiple ways that this could have gone. It felt like all of the pressure in the world is mounting on Brian Kelly. Can he finally win a home opener? Can he finally get over the hump? And I will admit, I was not as high on this LSU team to start the season as I should have been. I thought, okay, this is the same old LSU team. They start inside of the top 10 in the preseason AP poll. Everyone gets all excited because, yes, they have a great quarterback and Brian Kelly's there, and they're always going to have big players. But realistically, what can this team do defensively that's going to help them get over the hump? That's been kind of the story in this Brian Kelly era. Like, if they can figure it out on that side of the ball, they're going to be a national championship contender because they've always had an explosive offense. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman while Brian Kelly was there. Garrett Nussmeier elected to come back after a tremendous season last year. If he cuts down the interceptions, everyone feels like this guy can play himself into the number 1 overall pick. The offense has never been the problem for Brian Kelly. It's always been, can they tune up this defense? And boy, this defense looked unbelievable. In the first half, I thought, okay, this is going to get away from LSU pretty quickly here. They're down 10-3. Clemson's going to get the ball to start. And I'm like, this is going to be the same old LSU team. Here we go. They get put inside the top 10. They're going to choke. And, the rumor mill's going to start to get going pretty proficiently around Brian Kelly. And his seat's going to start to heat up. I was nervous at halftime. Brian Kelly and this defense, they come out there and they shut out Clemson in the second half. Garrett Nussmeier was picture perfect in the second half. They scored 14 points, a touchdown that should have counted, ultimately didn't. I thought that LSU looked unbelievable. They looked unbelievable. And this is now a team that I believe can win the national championship. This defense was sound. The fact that they shut out this Clemson team in the second half when their back is against the wall. I know it's week 1. I know it's early, but you're hearing, like, is Brian Kelly going to be on the hot seat? You're hearing all of these, very do or die rumors. And the fact that you're down on the road at halftime, it can go one of 2 ways. Your season can implode, or you can bounce back in a massive way and gain this momentum that it's like, we can go in a national championship. And that's what I truly believe happened with LSU. They stared death in the face and they went the other way. And I believe this team can absolutely go win it all. I was so impressed with this team defensively, what they did to stop Cade Klubnik. They got after him. They gave him nowhere to throw. Now, I understand they did lose their best receiver early on in the game, Antonio Williams. So it does make it tough for Clemson on the other side. There's a lot of question marks around them all of a sudden. And this is just so our society. Once you lose, once you have one bad game, everybody starts to question you and wonders if you can do it. Is this the same Clemson team from the past where they get overhyped? You've got Cade Klubnik, you've got good talent, but you've reached your ceiling. You're in a weak ACC conference. You'll probably get to the college football playoff. You'll probably win 10 games, but is that all you'll really see from them? Because a lot of people were hyping them up to be a national championship contender. Cade Klubnik to play himself into the number 1 overall pick. You've got the best offense around him. in that Clemson tenure, and I'm part of the problem. I said that this Clemson team is going to be a national championship contender. I had them in my national championship, and for me, I'm not panicking. I don't think Clemson all of a sudden is going to implode and they're going to be a bad team. I think they're going to get some things figured out. They looked good in the first half. The second half was just abysmal, in my opinion. The defense really imploded. The offense couldn't get anything to go, and I think that's more to do with LSU stepping up and snatching the momentum, also not having Antonio Williams. The offense around Cade Klubnik's going to have to be a lot better because they couldn't rush the football. They had 20 carries for 31 yards. They averaged 1.6 yards per carry. That doesn't help out your offense whatsoever. So if Cade Klubnik and this Clemson team is going to get back to the college football playoff and go on a deep run, they're going to have to do a lot of things a lot better. It's going to start with rushing the ball at a high level. It's going to start with getting Antonio Williams back to open up this passing game. Good news is for Clemson, they've got an absolute cupcake schedule. They can lose to South Carolina the last week of the season and still, be 9-3 with one loss in the ACC and get into the ACC championship and still make the college football playoff. Now, I don't envisioning that happening. I think they could, rattle off 11 wins in a row. If I'm being quite honest with you, the ACC, it's not a very good conference. You're going to go on the road against North Carolina in a few weeks, which is going to be an interesting game. Chapel Bill and company, and we'll talk about North Carolina here in a little bit because obviously they have a massive game tonight against TCU. They'll play SMU, their only other ranked opponent within the ACC, at home a few weeks later. And then in the last week of the season, you're going to have South Carolina. I think that Florida State game could be pretty interesting, but they'll also have Florida State at home. I just believe that this Clemson team will be better. I don't think this is the end of them. I don't believe that this is like their kind of do or die moment. You knew regardless of who lost this game, the rumor mill would be going crazy. You knew that the overreactions would be happening on Monday, and it always does. You see it with Arch. You're seeing it with Klubnik. You're seeing it with Clemson. I'm still optimistic about this team, but the team that just blew me away was LSU. This team, if they can continue to play like this on the defensive side of the ball, I firmly believe that they can not only, go win the SEC, I believe they can go win it all. I believe that everything is in front of them, and that's how good they are. They made an absolute statement. Let's stay in the SEC here because we had some absolute drama that happened this weekend, and it happened in Alabama. This team right now, they're on the ropes, and I didn't think that I'd be saying that this early on because, unfortunately, I picked them to win the SEC. And when you pick a team to win the SEC and they carry over from the struggles last year, you should be very concerned. And that's how I am right now. I'm very concerned about this Alabama team. There's so many clips going around right now of the players just not even trying at all on the play. Guys that can make the tackle aren't going full speed. And Dan Orlovsky said on the air today, he's like, you have guys right now that are on this team that would be kicked off the team because of the lack of effort they are giving if Nick Saban was still the head coach. And things are just different in this Kalen DeBoer era. And I believed that Alabama would win the SEC. I believed that they would turn it around. I looked at this offense with Ty Simpson like, okay, they've got a great offensive line. They've got tremendous receivers. They've got a great running back in Jam Miller who's going to be healthy in a few weeks. And Ty Simpson has been in college football for a while. I've been suckered in to the continuous cycle of quarterbacks that stay in college football for a while and finally figure it out. I've gotten suckered into that. So I felt that Ty Simpson was going to be a really good player. And they go down and score in that first drive of the game. I'm like, okay, this is the Alabama team that we know. I think they took like almost 8 minutes on that drive. This is the Alabama team of the past. They've got a crazy good offense. This defense is going to step up. I felt great. And then all of a sudden, Florida State was just unbelievable from that point on. Thomas Castellanos was untackleable. He looked so tremendous. He got everything that he wanted, whether that was in the air, whether it was on the ground. They controlled everything. And I believe that this Florida State team is legit. I know that you can panic right now if you're Alabama. You can panic if you're this team. And I believe that's what a lot of people are doing. I'm doing it myself. But I think on the other hand, there's been a lack of credit given towards Florida State. Florida State looked tremendous. I think the job that Tony White did defensively was unbelievable. Gus Malzahn did an incredible job of calling this game offensively. It seems like they've done a great job this offseason of turning things around, and you've got to get excited about this Florida State team. The ACC is a weaker conference. We're going to talk about Miami here in a little bit. Clemson struggled, but Florida State, they might be a team that can come out of nowhere right now and make the college football playoff. When you beat a top 10 team in the nation and you handle them like that, you're turning some heads, and they turned my head. I believe that Florida State now is an absolute dark horse contender to get into the college football playoff. I was incredibly impressed with the performance they had, but for Alabama, I'm scratching my head right now. I'm searching for answers right now because this doesn't look like the Alabama of the past. The culture doesn't seem like it's fully set in for Kalen DeBoer, and that's concerning because you're now in year 2. I saw on Twitter, his buyout is $70 million. That's ridiculous. So it's like, and I'm not trying to insinuate right now that he's on the hot seat or that he's going to get fired, but when you're at Alabama, your seat is always going to be hot. You're always going to have so many eyes on you, especially when you are following up the greatest head coach in the history of the sport, Nick Saban. You're always going to have eyes on you, and your seat is always going to be a little warm. And last year, it got hot because they go 9-4. They miss out on the college football playoff. They lose to a Michigan team who they were like a 2-touchdown favorite over in the bowl game. Then you're like, okay. But they've got a lot returning. They've got a lot of guys and a lot of talent offensively that should give you hope and life for this team. And to come out and lay an egg like this, it's really concerning. And ladies and gentlemen, we can go throughout the rest of their schedule. It's not favorable. They've still got 5 more ranked opponents on this schedule, and that's not even including Auburn on the road, who can become ranked later on in the year. You've got in 3 weeks, you're going on the road against Georgia, who's number 5 in the country, who's probably going to creep into the top 3, top 4. That is probably a loss. You're going to be 2-2 after 4 weeks. If you're 2-2 after 4 weeks, things are going to get loud, really loud at Alabama. Things are going to get so loud. I don't know how this team's going to handle it because they didn't handle it well last year. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I'm very curious to see how Kalen DeBoer changes things because his seat is rapidly heating up. And if you're 2-2, knowing that you've still got to play Tennessee, you've still got to go on the road against South Carolina, you've still got to play LSU at home and then Oklahoma at home. That's a 4-week stretch, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. That is brutal. All 4 of those teams are ranked inside of the top 25. Then 2 weeks later, you've got Auburn on the road. I don't think 8-4 is out of the range of this team right now. If they go 2-3 in those 5 ranked games, 8-4 is not out of the question for this. And it just felt like they had to win this Florida State game with how tough the schedule was. Because you can say to yourself, okay, if they go 2-3, between those 5 ranked opponents, you can feel more comfortable letting them into the college football playoff because the SEC is a bloodbath. There's so many great teams. You can feel more comfortable about that. But the fact of the matter is that they lose this game to Florida State. They really don't have too much room for error. Like, I could still see them being 9-3 because I think 9-3 is a very fair assessment for this team right now. I think they can make it into the college football playoff at 9-3. But you're looking at a team that right now could be it could easily be 8-4, could easily be 7-5. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, like on the road against Georgia, you're 2-2, 4 weeks in. That's a head scratcher right there. That is something that's, going to make every person in Alabama want to vomit. You'll probably win against Tennessee, even though they looked really good this weekend. On the road against South Carolina, that's going to be a really, really tough game. I think that's a winnable game, but South Carolina looks so dynamic with Lenoris Sellers. They had a great win against Virginia Tech. That's a winnable game, but then it's like, okay, you got LSU at home. Tough game. I think LSU can come in there and absolutely win it. Oklahoma, you're at home again, so I think you can win that one as well. But like I said, the room for error gets so small. You almost put yourself into the position that LSU was in last year. They lose week 1 to a USC team that they should have beat ultimately. They put themselves in a position where it's like week 8 or week 9 against Alabama. They've got to have it to make it into the college football playoff. It's pretty much an eliminator game that early on. You don't want to be playing eliminator games week 8, week 9 of the college football season. You just do not want to be doing it. It puts way too much pressure on you. I am nervous for this Alabama team right now. Obviously, I picked them to win the SEC. But before I say too much about Alabama, we've got to give our proper flowers to Florida State. They looked unbelievable. I believe that they can absolutely make the college football playoff. I can't wait to see what they do in the SEC or in the ACC, excuse me. And I would say the other team in the ACC that just looked brilliant was Miami yesterday. Miami looked unbelievable. And this was a team that I was so confident in coming into this year, and it started with Carson Beck. Carson Beck has gotten so much slander from the college football world. Georgia kicked him to the curb. He makes the right decision, in my opinion, staying another year in college football. He hits the portal, and he gets an opportunity to go to a team in Miami that just produced the #1 overall pick, who did the same exact thing, where they get Cam Ward to go to Miami and increases draft stock. Then he goes #1. Now, if you remember, I would say at the beginning of last year, most people felt that Carson Beck was the #1 quarterback in the class. He struggles. He throws double his interceptions. His stats just aren't the same. And he gets injured in the SEC championship, and everybody kind of gives up on Carson Beck. Well, the beauty of the NIL is that he can make a few $1,000,000, go to Miami, and have an opportunity to completely rewrite his story. And I felt that's what Jalen Milroe should have done. I felt that's what Quinn Ewers should have done. They both go to the draft. Quinn was, I believe a 6th or 7th round pick. That's unbelievable. Jalen Milroe, I think he went in the 3rd round, but that's just based off of his upside. If these guys stay another year in college football, I think you have a massive opportunity to increase your draft stock, even though you are a little bit older. And that's the trend we've been seeing with these older college quarterbacks going pro. The NIL has greatly benefited them. You look at Carson Beck last night. He was unbelievable. I really felt that he played a great game. It felt like he had so much revenge in his mind. He was going to prove everybody wrong, and that's exactly what he did. Miami pulls it out late. Notre Dame storms back in the end. We'll talk about Notre Dame here. I have some questions about them, but I want to talk about Carson Beck. Carson Beck played a tremendous game, completed 20 passes off 31 attempts, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I felt that Miami got a little conservative at the end of the game there, to just try and kind of win it, or to just try and bleed the clock out and not try and actually go win it. I felt they could have done a better job in terms of play calling. Thank goodness their field goal kicker drilled that long field goal to win them that game. But Carson Beck looked tremendous. I think he's the one quarterback in college football that you've got to keep your eye on. There's so many guys that we're looking at right now, the Garrett Nussmeyers of the world, the Cade Klubniks of the world, the Sellers, the Drew Allers, etc. You understand that. When you look at Carson Beck is a guy that can absolutely throw his hat in that ring. I mean, 6'4". He can really make any throw on the field. He's mobile-ish. Like, he's not a guy that's going to go run people over like Lenore Sellers, but he's mobile. He can get things done in the pocket. I think he's a quarterback that can absolutely throw his hat in the ring to be somebody that, gets drafted in the 1st round. That's the type of upside that he has. And this is a massive week 1 victory over one of the best defenses in college football, maybe the best secondary in college football. They were really good all night long, but Carson Beck made some huge throws in the first half that ultimately propelled this team to a victory. And I think this Miami team looked unbelievable defensively. They're in the same boat as LSU. They were in the same boat as LSU coming into this year. I felt that both of those teams last year had great offenses. They could do anything they wanted offensively, but when it came to their defense, they couldn't get a stop to save their life. Well, they really proved me wrong this year, because both of the defenses showed up, they came to play, and if their defense can answer the call, they're a team that can go on a deep run and potentially win a championship. They have that much talent offensively. If the defense shows up, this is a team that can win it all, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what Miami can do for the rest of the year. Unlike Clemson, they have a really tough ACC schedule. In 2 weeks, they'll play their final non-conference game. They'll play Florida. This is when the ACC schedule gets really tough. They're going to go on the road against Florida State. They'll go on the road against SMU, and then they'll go on the road against Virginia Tech. 3 teams that, could all have some upset implications. But I think we've got to assume that Miami will find themselves in the ACC championship. They'll give themselves a shot to make the college football playoff. They've only got 2 more ranked opponents the rest of the year. I think Florida State will get ranked, so you can call that their 3rd ranked opponent. I think a 10-2 Miami team gets into the college football playoff, especially with a top 10 win right here against Notre Dame. This is huge for Miami's college football playoff resume. I love what Carson Beck is doing, and I think he's a guy to watch in terms of the rest of the season. He is really a player that can increase his draft stock, and I cannot wait to see what he does. Let's go to Utah versus UCLA. We got a question here from Carly in the chat. And I was going to talk about UCLA. I was going to talk about Utah. This is a game where I felt that it was going to be a lot closer. I think it was only like a 6-point spread. And you have Nico Iamaleava, who obviously stunned the college football world, transferring to UCLA after being the first ever college football holdout. He goes to UCLA, but he obviously has an immense amount of talent. Everybody feels really good about him, but he kind of struggled in this week 1 game, to say the least. And there are a few different ways that you can look at this. First of all, Utah is going to be unbelievable. This is another team that can find themselves in the college football playoff with a wide open Big 12. I mean, Devin Dampier, this is a guy that can be a Heisman contender, in my opinion. He was unstoppable. 21 for 25, 206 passing yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He had 16 carries, 87 yards, and another touchdown. Dampier was awesome. It just felt like this UCLA defense couldn't get him on the ground to save their lives. He was making every single play, extending every single play, and giving this UCLA defense just so much to deal with. So I think on one hand, you have a Utah team that's going to be unbelievable this year, and they are going to be really good, one of the best O-lines in the country. But on the other hand, you have a UCLA team that's just not overly talented, but Nico Iamaleava, he didn't look great. He did not look great, struggled. 50% of his passes he completed. He had 136 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He just didn't wow you. He didn't wow you. And I don't know if that's because UCLA doesn't have the most talent on the outside, because I do think Nico's a talented quarterback. He looked good in Tennessee. And I really just question if this is going to be the downfall of his career. And I really hope it's not. I really hope he can bounce back and have a great collegiate career. But I'm hoping that this isn't the downfall of his career, because he gets greedy. And I don't know if it was his dad, or I don't know if who gave him this advice, but he got greedy. He wanted more money from Tennessee, and they ultimately say, no, we're not paying you. You can, go kick rocks. So he gets less money from UCLA now. And we'll talk about Tennessee here in a minute, because their quarterback looked awesome. But he goes to UCLA for less money. It backfired in a big time way. And now after 1 week, Tennessee fans, I saw them. They were pretty excited. They were excited to see that Nico struggled, which is just a bummer, because he was a guy that was in the college football playoff last year. He's like 6'6". He's extremely mobile. He has a huge arm. He's accurate. I mean, he could do so much in terms of measurables. He checks every single box. Yeah, you'd want him to be a little thicker, but he checks every single box in terms of a quarterback that can play at the next level. And now it's like, okay, he goes from a guy that maybe is a 2nd to 3rd round pick to try and increase his draft stock with Heupel, who's been a tremendous maker of quarterbacks. Now, I don't know anymore. I really don't know. And that's why I'm just hoping he didn't sacrifice that short-term bag for the long-term bag, because they might both be out the window right now. They might both be out the window. UCLA, they're just not a great football team overall, and they've got a tough schedule. They've got a really tough schedule in the Big Ten. I mean, you're looking at a team that is not guaranteed to be over 500 this year. You've still got Penn State. You've got to go on the road against Indiana. You've got Nebraska. You've got to go on the road against Ohio State. You got to go on the road against USC. You got to play Washington at home. Washington looked really special. This is not going to be a good year for UCLA, and I'm hoping that Nico can pick it up. I'm hoping that he can prove a lot of people wrong, because this was a very discouraging sign with everything considered for a team that, had higher expectations with a guy that was such a highly touted recruit and was one of the biggest stories of the entire offseason. So we'll see what happens with UCLA. We'll see what happens with Nico. But there was a team with a quarterback that he might go number 1 overall, ladies and gentlemen. Lenoris Sellers is must-see TV, and I encourage everyone right now, buy all the Lenoris Sellers stock that you can. He is so flippin' good. He had 209 passing yards off of only 12 attempts. He just flat out trucked a dude for a touchdown to get things started for South Carolina. And this is a team now with Lenoris Sellers that the sky's the limit for them. The sky is the limit for South Carolina with Shane Beamer, with Lenoris Sellers. I cannot wait to see what they can do in the SEC, because if you remember, they were one of the hottest teams in college football last year. They're 3-3 through the first 6 games. Everyone questioning, okay, is Beamer on the hot seat? They win 6 games in a row and barely miss out on the college football playoff. If they make that field goal against LSU, I believe they were up like 17 points. at home against LSU in the first 6 weeks when they went 3-3. If they just hold on to that game, they make the college football playoff, and we get to see more Lenore Sellers in terms of postseason football. Now they get another year to regather themselves, to figure out who they are. And I felt they played a good Virginia Tech team. That's a big win to get things started. They've got a really tough SEC schedule, and they just got a tough schedule in general. I mean, let's go through their back half of the year. They've got a 5-week stretch where they play 5 ranked opponents. They go on the road against LSU. Then they're at home against Oklahoma, who's 18th ranked. Then they play Alabama at home, who's 8th ranked. Then they go on the road against Ole Miss, who's ranked 21st in the country. Then they go on the road against Texas A&M, who's 19th in the country. Then 2 weeks later, they get Clemson at home. That is their final 6 out of 7 weeks, 6-7, where they play a ranked team. That is brutal, but it's like same situation with Alabama here. If they're 9-3, I think they're going to make it into the college football playoff over Alabama. They've got one of the toughest schedules in football. Lenore Sellers is must-see TV, especially after they just missed out last year. We've got to look at them as a potential team that can make the college football playoff. Lenore Sellers is a guy that can play himself into the number 1 overall pick, and I like what Shane Beamer is doing over there in South Carolina. I really do like it. I believe that they are a team that can shock some people, and when you've got a guy like Lenore Sellers who, you know, the sky's the limit for him. When you've got a guy like him who can prove everybody wrong, who can get on a run, I think you've got a major advantage over every other college football team. So let's see what South Carolina can do the rest of the season. We've got another question here in the chat. Is the Alabama loss versus Florida State worse than Clemson's loss versus LSU? Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, I would say that Alabama losing to Florida State is a way bigger deal. Like, yeah, Clemson on one hand, you shouldn't lose that game when you're up 7 at halftime. You're at home. You've got the ball coming out of halftime, but you also are down your best receiver. You are down, you're going up against a tremendous LSU defense who gets their safety back in the second half, who was out because he was suspended. For Alabama, I'm just very concerned about how they're going to be able to bounce back from this. This is a brutal position to be in so early on because of how tough the schedules are in the SEC. There are so many ranked opponents. There's so many great teams that are all trying to get into the college football playoff. And for Alabama, they could have 6 more ranked opponents on the rest of their schedule. And to lose against a Florida State team that you were a 2-touchdown favorite against, it's absolutely brutal. I believe that, Alabama, they're on the ropes right now. They're on the ropes. So we'll see if they can get into the college football playoff. I have a lot of question marks about them. The one thing that I noticed this week, and I don't know if other people noticed it as well, I had a lot of people texting me. Obviously, I'm a big Nebraska fan. I had a lot of people texting me after the game on Thursday night that like, oh, Dylan Raiola didn't look that good. He didn't look that impressive. He didn't push the ball down the field. And in my head, I was like, I felt that he played a really good game. Like he did what he was asked to do. He completed the ball at a really high level. He didn't turn the football over. He had 2 passing touchdowns, over 200 yards. I didn't feel like he had the proper opportunity as well to push the ball down the field because that's just not what they called. And then I look at all these other quarterbacks that are like top 10 in odds to win the Heisman. Arch Manning, Ty Simpson. You look at Cade Klubnik. You look at Garrett Nussmeier. Dylan Raiola played better than all of those guys. And the point I'm trying to make with all of this is like the quarterback play did not blow me away in week 1 at all. I was honestly really disappointed with the high level quarterback play that we saw because this is one of the most hyped up in terms of draft classes. This is one of the most hyped up draft classes that I can remember for a quarterback class. And I wasn't overly impressed with the performances. I felt that Raiola played a great game. I felt that Castellanos played a great game. Carson Beck was unbelievable. But the guys that everybody have been talking about this offseason, they didn't play that great. And I'm not saying, oh, they're going to be bad this year or they're, not going to be first round picks. No, they're going to figure it out. Garrett Nussmeier could easily be the number 1 overall pick. Cade Klubnik could easily be the number 1 overall pick. Drew Aller could easily be the number 1 overall pick. You've got so many guys that can be the number 1 overall pick. I believe that, we're going to see some more high level play at the quarterback position, but I was missing it in week 1. I was missing this high level quarterback play. It was honestly kind of disappointing, but we'll see what's to come for the rest of the year. The final thing that I'll talk about here for college football, as we celebrated the final ever college game day of Lee Corso, just such a legend, so awesome for the sport of college football. How classic is it that he nailed every single pick? He gets that Florida State game right too, the 2 touchdown underdogs. I mean, just how fitting is it that he nails every single pick? I thought it was so awesome, the job that Game Day did to send him out with a bang. He picks Ohio State as well in the shoe. That was an awesome moment for college football, and congrats to a legend for everything that he's done for the sport. Ladies and gentlemen, by the time I stream again this Friday, we will have our first NFL game underneath our belt for this year, and that is between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Football is all the way back. I mean, it is the best time of the year. I had my fantasy draft this weekend. I'm feeling really good about my fantasy team. I'm just feeling great about the squad this year. Came in third last year. I had like the 4th pick in the draft, and I got Jahmyr Gibbs. I was feeling really excited about that. But football's all the way back. It's the best time of the year. We've got a tremendous slate of week 1 games in the NFL. I'm not too excited about this game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cowboys. I just don't think the Cowboys are going to be that good this year. I didn't feel that they were going to be that good before, the season started and before this Micah Parsons trade happened. But now that it happened, it's like the Cowboys are going to be terrible. The Cowboys are not going to be good this year. I don't see them winning 5 games. They're not going to be a good team. I think Philadelphia is not going to see a Super Bowl slump. This is going to be one of the best teams in the entire NFL. Philadelphia has got a massive chip on their shoulder for this season. When you look at everybody saying that Jalen Hurts wasn't a top 10 quarterback in the league after winning this Super Bowl, he dominated last season. And I understand that Saquon Barkley was one of the only running backs in NFL history to rush for over 2,000 yards. So when you have that obviously helps. But at the same time, Jalen Hurts out-dueled Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts was picture perfect when you called his number, and that's what you need at the quarterback position. Yes, you've got great weapons on the outside with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but Jalen Hurts now has another chip on his shoulder after everybody is discounting what he did last year, and I think that's the wrong person to make mad if you are a NFL fan, if you're a coach, if you're a player, because Jalen Hurts is going to come out there and tear you up. We saw what happened when he lost in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now he comes back, wins that Super Bowl last season. I'm excited just for football starting overall. We've got a huge game in Brazil between the Chiefs and the Chargers. This is going to be a great game. I look at the Los Angeles Chargers as a team that is going to get so much better. They won 11 games last year with just an average offense, in my opinion. Their bread and butter was, we're going to ground and pound, run the football on you. They had a rookie wide receiver in Ladd McConkey who was really good. But outside of that, they just didn't do anything to threaten you down the field. And yet they win 11 games in year 1 of the Jim Harbaugh era. And that's just Jim Harbaugh football. And that's why I'm so optimistic for this team coming into this year, because not only do you have the storyline of like, Justin Herbert has yet to win a playoff game. He throws 4 interceptions in the postseason. Everybody's giving up on him. You not only have that narrative and storyline, but you also have the perspective like, hey, they won 11 games last year and the offense is so much better. You get year 2 of Jim Harbaugh. Justin Herbert and him now have a better chemistry, a better connection from what they had last year. You can stack up some of the greatest players that we've seen in the game. Josh Allen's going to be a future Hall of Famer. Lamar Jackson is going to be a future Hall of Famer. Joe Burrow is on pace to be a future Hall of Famer. CJ Stroud is unbelievable. Justin Herbert is so good. You've got all these great quarterbacks in the AFC. Nobody can beat the big bad wolf that is Patrick Mahomes. Nobody can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I just believe that as long as Andy Reid and Mahomes are together, nobody's going to be able to beat this team. I truly believe that. And I think we're in store for a great game. Rashee Rice out for the first 6 weeks of the season. You get the last dance of Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. This is going to be obviously just such a storied season. But I look at them losing in the Super Bowl last year, that missing out on the three-peat, all of the motivation this offseason, all the Chiefs aren't that good, Patrick Mahomes isn't that good, he's not the best quarterback in the NFL. No. Patrick Mahomes is easily the best quarterback in the NFL. I would say that this receiving core is just terrifying. Xavier Worthy had his best game in the Super Bowl last year. He had 2 touchdowns. You look at Hollywood Brown, he doesn't play the entirety of the regular season. He comes back and he plays pretty decent in the postseason, but now he finally gets time to get acclimated with Mahomes. He's going to be ready to go week 1, and he'll have to step up for Rashee Rice, who's missing the first 6 weeks. But once you get Rashee back 6 weeks through the season, who was injured almost all of last year because Mahomes ran into his knee on that interception, once you get Rashee Rice back, this team all of a sudden has a tremendous offense. You get Josh Simmons in the first round at the left tackle spot, who's really going to hopefully help shore up this offensive line, an O-line that really struggled last year. They could not get it done in the Super Bowl. We just saw Philadelphia dominate them because that defensive line is just terrifying. I believe that this Chiefs team will win the entire thing. I don't see how anyone beats them realistically. And you know, they always say that history repeats itself. I got to look at the sample size from the past. You can stack up this Ravens team as much as you want. You can throw as many all-pros on there as you want. You can add Jair Alexander. You can add DeAndre Hopkins. Do we really think that they're going to beat the Chiefs? They hosted the Chiefs 2 years ago, and they lost. Mahomes had to go on the road for the first time in the playoffs. You could just add all these different caveats to what Mahomes has to do, and he'll get it done. Because that's the greatness of number 15. That's how great of a quarterback he is. That's how great of a player he is. He's going to go down as the second best player in NFL history without a doubt. And sometimes when you have a player like Tom Brady, when you have a player like Michael Jordan, and when you have a player like Patrick Mahomes, nobody else is going to eat on his watch. Who knows if Lamar's ever going to win a Super Bowl? Who knows if Josh Allen's ever going to win a Super Bowl? Burrow had his chance to win a Super Bowl, but he was only in his second year. He tears his ACL his rookie year. So, I mean, you could even say that's partially his rookie year. Like, nobody is going to eat on Mahomes' watch. And we're watching something special with him right now. And I think we all need to appreciate that before it's too late. And, you know, he wins 7 Super Bowls and nobody else wins a thing, because that's the greatness of Patrick Mahomes. That's the greatness of him. And I believe they're going to be motivated from that loss last year. And they can win in so many different ways. Like, they lose Tyreek Hill 3 seasons ago. And I'm like, I make the dumbest take of my life. And I say they're not going to make the playoffs. And they win the Super Bowl. And that's when I'm like, okay, I'm never doubting the Chiefs ever again. I'm never doubting Patrick Mahomes ever again. And they just pound the ball. They get it done defensively. They don't do anything flashy. And they win the Super Bowl. And then the next year, they go to overtime against Brock Purdy. They have to go on the road for the first times in the Mahomes era. They win another Super Bowl. Oh, then they get 1 game away from completing NFL history, winning a three-peat, completing a three-peat. We've never seen that before. That's the greatness of number 15, and we've got to appreciate it while we can. And since I made that egregious take that they wouldn't make the playoffs 3 years ago, I have told myself I will never fade Patrick Mahomes again. I will never doubt him again. And that's what I truly believe. I truly believe we're going to see him go down as the second best quarterback in NFL history. And he's on a crazy pace right now. And I can't wait to watch this game in Brazil. It's going to be a really good game. We've also got some other tremendous games that I will be officially predicting on Friday, so you guys come back. But I'll break them down a little bit for you guys right now. One of the games that I'm the most excited for is the Texans and Rams. If you guys know Caden's Corner at all, I'm like the biggest Rams truther, the biggest Rams defender on planet Earth. If this team blocks Jalen Carter up the middle last year, they could potentially win the Super Bowl. They definitely get back to the Super Bowl. They beat Jaden Daniels. They get back to the Super Bowl. They were the closest team to beating the Philadelphia Eagles last year, and people are so quick to forget that. They nearly did it. And I understand there are a lot of question marks like, okay, if Matthew Stafford takes one bad hit, is his back just cooked for the entirety of the season? Like, that's definitely a possibility because, you know, when you're in your late 30s and you have a back injury before the season even starts and now you have 300-pounders slamming you to the ground, that definitely doesn't help your back. I mean, you know, people struggle enough to heal their back without 300-pounders slamming them on the ground. Matthew Stafford, it's hopefully not going to be an uphill climb for him this year, but if there's one thing we know about Stafford is that he's tough as nails. He's one of the toughest quarterbacks in the NFL. 2 years ago, I remember him literally getting knocked out against the Lions, and he just gets up, keeps playing. Because that's Matthew Stafford football. We've got to appreciate that about him. We've got to appreciate that about the Los Angeles Rams, because I think they're knocking on the door to win a Super Bowl right now. They're in a really interesting position where it's like they can go one of two ways. They can not only win the Super Bowl this year, but I think they're also built for the future with Jared Verse, with Braden Fisk, with the guys that they've drafted, with the tremendous job that Les Snead has done drafting this team. The front seven's got to be a lot better if they want to be able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that run game against Los Angeles, it was like barbecue chicken. It was Swiss cheese. You can use whatever, adjective, hyperbole, whatever you want. The Rams couldn't stop them. They could not stop Saquon Barkley. They could not stop this dominant offensive line. And to be fair, nobody could, but the Rams were especially bad. And the offense is always going to be great. They re-signed Kyren. Matthew Stafford, there were question marks about his future coming into this year. He ultimately comes back. They obviously make the huge move of moving on from Cooper Kupp. They go sign Devontae Adams, who in my opinion has still got a lot of gas left in the tank. And of course, Puka Nacua is one of the best receivers in football. I think this team right now, everything would tell you that with Sean McVay, with the winning pedigree that he brings, they're not only going to be tremendous on offense, they're not only going to be amazing in that passing game. They're not only going to be able to run the ball at a high level with Kyren, but what can they do defensively? What can this front seven do? I think Jared Verse right now is like top 5 in terms of defensive player of the year odds. People are expecting that type of jump from him. He won the defensive rookie of the year last year. Braden Fisk was the runner up. Nailed those 2 D-line picks. Poona Ford, they pick up from the Chargers. He's going to have to be great. If the front seven can stop the run, this Rams team, they can win the Super Bowl without a doubt. Now they're going to be hosting a really good Texans team, in my opinion, that has quietly built one of the best defenses in football. I can't compliment enough the job that DeMeco Ryans has done building this defense in Houston, because, ladies and gentlemen, it is scary. It is young. They fly around. Will Anderson Jr. could win the Defensive Player of the Year this year. Danielle Hunter, they re-signed him. He's awesome. And the secondary, it's dominant. I mean, it is so good. You not only have Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie, Kalen Bullock, and Derek Stingley, 4 tremendous players in the secondary, but they added CJ Gardner-Johnson coming over from Philadelphia, who's one of the most vocal players in the league, who's going to be the vocal leader of this defense. I always felt he was the vocal leader in Philadelphia. Now he's coming over to Houston to almost mentor these young defensive backs. This can be the best secondary in football, and you need to have a tremendous secondary. You need to have a tremendous defense, for that matter, if you're going to beat any of these high-flying teams in the AFC. And I keep talking about the tremendous job that the Broncos have done building this defense up. Because right now in the AFC, you've got to have a great defense if you're going to stop some of these high-flying offenses. When you've got Mahomes, when you've got Burrow, when you've got Allen, when you've got Lamar, when you've got Herbert, when you've got CJ Stroud, you've got to have a great defense. And it seems like the Houston Texans have taken every right step to just continue to add great players. Azeez Al-Shaair, one of the most fun linebackers to watch, one of my favorite signings from a few years ago. Derek Stingley, who they took in the first round, who's just blossomed into one of the best corners in football. They are building this defense in a great way. Now what can the offense do? The offense last year was bad, and it was bad because of the injuries that they faced. The O-line, first of all, was one of the worst in football. Everybody on this receiving core gets injured, and it all comes down to CJ Stroud, the second-year quarterback who everyone's saying, oh, he had a sophomore slump. No, he did not. The dude won a playoff game last year. He's one of the only quarterbacks in NFL history to win a playoff game in each of his first 2 seasons starting. That is the greatness of CJ Stroud. He's on a terrific pace right now. He's only 2 years into this thing, and he's got a playoff win in each of his first 2 seasons. Now you give him a great offensive line. You go get Cam Robinson. You go get Laken Tomlinson. You really shore up this offensive line. Not only that, Nico Collins is healthy, ready to go. You go get Christian Kirk. You draft 2 receivers out of Iowa State, and Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. This receiving core all of a sudden is really good. Hopefully they get Tank Dell at some point this year. This receiving core is all of a sudden tremendous. The offensive line is a million times better. And now you're going to let CJ Stroud go back there and cook. He was in the MVP conversation his rookie year. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, is this going to be the first rookie to win the MVP? That was in 2023 when nobody knew who to give the MVP to. People are like, you can't give it to Brock Purdy. He's just throwing checkdowns. Oh, you can't give it to Dak Prescott. He's the quarterback of the Cowboys. Oh, you can't give it to Lamar. His stats aren't that good. Why don't you give it to Josh Allen? Like, nobody knew who to give the MVP to that year. And like halfway through the year, people are like, does a rookie potentially win the MVP? Because he, just completely turns around this Houston Texans team. A turnaround that we haven't seen in Houston in a long time, since Deshaun. Deshaun leaves and they're one of the worst teams in football, and Stroud brings them back to life. And that's why I think we've got to start, putting CJ Stroud in these conversations of, okay, you can put him in the conversations of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. That's how great I believe CJ Stroud is. He's without a doubt a top 10 QB in the league, and I can't wait to see what he does to prove everyone wrong this year, because he's going to have a massive opportunity to really take this Texans team deep into the playoffs. And I don't think it's like, okay, they're going to play the Chiefs in the first round and lose anymore. No, I expect them to win. I expect them to win some of these big games. They can go beat a Buffalo Bills caliber team. They can go beat the Los Angeles Chargers. It's going to be tough to beat Baltimore and KC because those are my top two teams in the AFC. But we've got to have a serious look at Baltimore, or at Houston, excuse me. We've got to take a serious look at them because they're good enough to compete with some of these great teams in the NFL. They're good enough to compete with some of these high-flying offenses in the AFC. I am all in on the Houston Texans. I can't wait to see what they do. We get a tremendous slate of games in week one. What an awesome week one in college football that we saw. We get a great game tonight. The debut of Bill Belichick in North Carolina. Apparently Michael Jordan's going to be there. You're going to have some huge stars that are out ready to watch Bill Belichick in his debut. I cannot wait to see what they do. I'm going to have to give this one to TCU. I think, everything's kind of being overhyped in North Carolina right now. TCU's like a 3.5-point favorite. Really like what Sonny Dykes has done there. You look at the second half of the year. I mean, they were really good last year in the second half of the season. I think this is a TCU team that, can also compete in a Big 12 that people are claiming is wide open. I think they can go on a run. I believe in this TCU team, but I can't wait to watch it. We're so blessed to have football back. It's going to be the 5th straight day in a row of football. Let's enjoy it. We don't get too many weekends of these, so let's enjoy it. We get a tremendous slate of games this week, and I'll be breaking all of them down on Friday, so make sure you guys tune in on Friday. I'll be bringing you guys my official playoff predictions, who I have making the playoffs, who I have winning it all, who's winning the MVP. All the official predictions are coming to you guys on Friday, so make sure you guys do not miss out. Thank you so much for making me a part of your day. My name is Caden Kubler, and from Caden's Corner, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.